Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to Techniques of the Week. It is our last Find Us Resources Friday. Today we'll be talking about crisis lines. So we'll do check-ins, go through a couple of different myths about calling in a crisis line, and then I'll walk you through a couple of different options that are out there. Final challenge, and then best ways to get in touch with me. So check-ins from me, I am just ready to be done. I gotta tell you, it's been a really long couple of years of this soft closure, and I'm sure it's not actually years, but it feels like it. So I'm kind of excited for a little bit of a break from this. Media review. I wanted to talk a little bit about the importance of failure. So I've shared this with a lot of the students that I work with, but not always with the parents. We, as a society, sometimes get so fixated on being perfect and never, failing. But it's important to admit that everyone fails, and that's okay. We need to sort of change our perspective of how we look at failure, because without failure, we can't have success. So a lot of times we feel like we can't, you know, ever drop the ball. But it's important to really realize that as parents, we fail all the time, and that's okay because the only way we get to be better at something is to fail at it. So, importance of failure is a really good. There's a couple of different books. There's Failing Upward, Failing Forward, The Value of Failure. There's a couple of different really good books out there about why it's so important for us to experience defeat or feel like we didn't do a very good job. And then the random fact of today, I wanted to talk about the bystander effect, which is where folks saw an emergency happen. Kitty Genovese was a New York City resident in Queens, and she was fatally stabbed one night. The hard thing to believe is that she was attacked once, and then the perpetrator ran off, and nobody called the police because everyone sort of assumed that other people would call the police. And after a little while, the attacker returned and ended up, fatally stabbing her. So, because no one got through to the police and the emergency response systems didn't come out, her life was forfeit. It's a little bit more complicated than that. There's the New York Times actually released a statement that they didn't have the best journalism in that story coverage, but essentially we can't think that somebody else is going to call or it's someone else's responsibility. If we see someone that might be in harm's way, we have to act. We can't just presume that somebody else is going to do something. This is why in CPR training courses, it's very hit upon hard that you have to point to someone, make eye contact, and tell them you call 911, not just say someone call 911. So giving that responsibility and making sure that we're not all standing around and thinking someone else is going to intervene. So I wanted to talk a little bit about myths about crisis lines. A lot of people have reluctance to call in because they're never sure if it's serious enough or they're worried about confidentiality or privacy. So the first myth I wanted to talk about is that you have to be experiencing suicidal thoughts to call. And that's not true. There are a number of different types of crisis, and the responders are trained for a variety of them. So whether it's abuse or grief or some sort of domestic violence or sexual abuse, neglect. And then NSSH stands for non-suicidal self-harm. So this is things like cutting or engaging in some behavior that is risky and dangerous to yourself, and it is self-harm, but that might not necessarily be actively suicidal. The second myth is that if someone's suicidal, they'll call the police to come straight to your house. And that's not true. The goal for most of these services is always just de-escalation. One of them has a catchphrase where they were trying to get from a hot moment to a cool moment. So changing it from just full-on crisis to let's de-escalate a little bit. The crisis text line is one that I'll talk about, and they have actively sort of published this result of only 1% of cases that they receive result in them calling first responders. I wasn't able to find that same statistic from the other crisis lines, but at least that one, 99% of the time, they're able to de-escalate. And the last myth is that the call is going to be monitored and then you're going to be reported to DCFS or some similar government agency that might come and try to break up your family. And that is not true. Privacy is number 2 on their list of priorities. So in terms of wanting to be safe is number 1. Privacy is very important to all these agencies. And most of the information is going to be a voluntary disclosure. They might ask you to give certain information to them. If you at any point don't feel comfortable, you can just say that I'm not comfortable giving you my address or telling you where I live, what city I'm in, how old my child is. All of that is voluntary disclosure. Okay, so number one is SafeUT. This is I think it's probably 2 years old now, but it is about 50 millibytes of data that would be a downloadable app that you can report tips or talk to a crisis worker. It's gotten really, really popular in the state of Utah. Most Davis School District employees have this on their wall somewhere. It's a confidential app, so everything is password protected. All of your information is voluntary again. They have resources there for a bunch of different types of people, so parents, students, and educators. And their main goals are to just have supportive listening in a non-judgmental room, and then really working on problem solving, crisis intervention, and then resource coordination. The tip line from SafeUT is for non-crisis but safety-related tips. So if you think that something dangerous is coming down the road, or if you're just a little bit worried about, someone's general overall safety, you can use the tip line if it's not for a full crisis. Next up, Davis Behavioral Health. I did a presentation about them earlier, but this will focus on their crisis hotline. The phone number is right there. For adults, that's people that are 22 or older, they have a mobile crisis outreach team, and that's usually one mental health therapist and one family resource facilitator that respond to mental health or substance crises within 30 minutes. So that's a pretty cool service for adults. And then for your children, so 0 to 21, they have a stabilization and mobile response team, and they work really closely with the Student and Families Resource Center of Davis School District. So if you're calling about someone that is a student of Davis County, then they're going to coordinate with Brad Christensen and Casey Layton and a couple of other members of their team. Though the mobile response team, the stabilization mobile response team, is comprised of a mental health therapist and a case manager, and they really work on any emotional or behavioral trauma that might impact a student's ability to, be functional in their family. Uni is another great resource. I can sing its praises. I used to work there for quite a few years. They have a couple of different options. They've got a crisis line at 587-3000 for crisis intervention, suicide prevention, or if someone's in extreme emotional or psychiatric distress. That's what the crisis line would be for. They also have a mobile crisis outreach team and a receiving center. So mobile crisis, they would come to you, and then the receiving centers if you're able to transport to them. This is a short term, so about 23 hours or less, but they do quick rapid assessment, treatment planning, and then they also have something that's really cool. I like it. It's called a calm line. So that's 587-1055. This is if you're not in crisis, but you really need some support or engagement or encouragement. And the only caveat on the calm line is that it's only 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. So in the middle of the night, it's not available. That's when you'd have to use one of the other crisis lines. This is probably the most well-known hotline. This is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. You can find it at the website up there, or the numbers right there, 800-273-TALK. And you can also chat online if you'd rather chat than do a phone call. It is free and confidential. It's nationwide, but they have over 150 local crisis centers. Uni is actually one of those local crisis centers. I'm not sure if DBH is, but I know Uni is. They've also got a number of different resources on their tab and hope and recovery stories. So you can, if anyone that's ever been in this battle with a loved one or a family member where they've been contemplating suicide, sometimes it is nice to read about people that have recovered and just get some hope going. The crisis text line, this is great for younger teens that have the ability to text. You can text anytime, 24/7. And this is the one that goes from a hot moment to a cool moment. And they've got all sorts of different help topics. So the nice thing about this crisis text line is that it does not focus primarily on suicide. It focuses on just anyone that might need help, anyone that might be in crisis. So really concerns related to the current pandemic or mental health or even things that are going on at school. They've got people that are there to help. So that is it. This is my final challenge. I want you all to have a nice, safe summer so I get to see all the smiling kids and young adults that I work with next fall when I come back and when we all come back, whatever that looks like. I really appreciate you guys tuning in, and I hope you have a great summer. Just really quick, I will probably not be checking my school work phone or my Google Voice text message. So if you want to get in touch with me over the summer, the best way is through email. I hope to hear from you all. Take care.